But I knew that I wanted to be a poet. I remember going into my boss. My boss was Mr. Cloud. Said the exact sentence was, "Mr. Cloud, I'm going to be a poet." And I'll never forget it. He looked at me for a couple of beats, and he closed his eyes, and his head just went down to his desk. Oh no! But so I went to Virginia. I left New York, and I lived in a farmhouse, and I wrote poems, and I thought I would make my living as a house painter. That was my game plan, and that would be the way to pay for my that would be the way that I sort of pay for my addiction, so to speak. So I wrote, in doing the book reviews, we were talking earlier today about finding a press that you relate to. And so I was writing all these book reviews, and I would go to the Virginia Quarterly Review, and I would write these little postage stamp sized reviews, and I found a book called Matters of the Heart by W.D. Earhart. It was a Vietnam poet. And it had come out from a little press that was run by a high school teacher in Pennsylvania. Is that right, Pennsylvania? No, Massachusetts. Yeah, Massachusetts, sorry. And Adastra Press, which means to the stars. And so I wrote this review, and as I was writing the review and reading the book, I thought, I could really see my poems being in this guy's hands. And it was a tiny little thing, just a little small, 15 poems. And so I put together a little manuscript, and first I had my former English professor read the poems, and he says, "Oh, you're the poet of windows and walls." And just to show you how much you can not know about your own writing, I said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "You don't know?" I said, "No." And he said, "Well, every one of your poems has either a window or a wall in it." No doors, just windows and walls. So I looked. So Windows and Walls it became. It was my first book. I sent it to Adastra. He went back to me and said, "Yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for." So that advice we were talking about today is absolutely true. And I had sent poems to no one else. But I saw that book, I thought, oh yeah, I feel the connection there. So I was in Virginia, and I was living at the foot of the Blue Ridge outside Charlottesville when I was writing. And I wrote until I finished my first book. I was pretty sure it was done. I didn't really bother very much putting things out, but I published 2 chapbooks. Windows and Walls was the first one, and then Innocent Things. These little tiny. I mean, my normal books are skinny and thin, but these were really skinny and thin. They were little tiny things. And by virtue of them, I got invited to Chapel Hill for a writers' conference, very much like this one. Because, I guess unknown just means you don't have a book with your name on it. So I was a kind of not very well known, hardly known at all, maybe really probably still an unknown. So I got to read at the lunchtime menu in the cafeteria. Well, in the cafeteria was the editor of Copper Canyon Press, Sam Hamill, and after I read, he said, I want to talk to you later this afternoon. And he came and got me and took me aside, and he just said everything you could possibly want to hear. He called me all these wonderful things like prodigy. He says, "You've mastered the line, you're a master." And I thought, I'm 20 something. But I believed him, and I knew he was right. That's what that was it. I was working on the line. I wasn't working on the whole thing. I was just the line. That was my thing, the line. So he knows I'm working on the line. So he said, "I want you to send me your book, and I'm going to publish it." So I went back to Earlsville, and I got back home, and I thought about it, and I thought, he was probably just being nice. And the next day, more of the mean people inside me. He didn't really mean that. And a week goes by, more of those old mean people inside me. Just hang it up. And so I didn't send him my book. And about 6 weeks later, he wrote me this one-line letter saying, "I've just rejected 500 manuscripts. Where's the one book I asked to see?" And really, he not only did everything down there, he sent me it was all I could do to put it in the manuscript and send it. And within 2 weeks, Rebecca said, "Absolutely, yeah." But you have to understand, that book, he didn't change a comma in that book. That book was so done, that book was so ready. So the timing was right. And you will, it's not that you have to go find someone, they'll find you. You really need to trust that. What Lynn said earlier today about, trust that you'll have more poems coming, or that the world will find you. So anyway, so that's how that happened, and I've been with Copper Canyon. They've been very loyal to me, and I've published some other chapbooks. I love doing chapbooks because I feel really indebted to them putting on. But the thing was the making of the book, was the putting together that little chapbook, putting together the book. I really like doing that. I think there are different kinds of poets. My favorite poet is Charles Summitt. I think he could just put together any kind of handful of poems he's written. They're always wonderful. But for me, I really feel that I'm making books when I write. So I really like doing that. And I was really lucky to be in that farmhouse. It was a great place. I wrote there for 6 years, and it's where I learned so very much. And I didn't have much money. It was a very quiet time, but it was really, really wonderful. And the one thing I'll tell you about that also is I bought my first sort of adult material possession at that period. I had an old beat-up car because I was pretty far outside of town. But when you live in a farmhouse, you eventually have to do your laundry. And my laundry, I would just kind of let it pile up in these giant mountains of clothes. And so eventually you have to take your clothes into town. I needed a pickup truck, so I bought a washer and dryer. And I had them in my kitchen. Well, when I first came to this house, surrounded by all these beautiful views and so forth, so I thought, I'll put my desk by the window and have the Blue Ridge Mountains to inspire me every day. Work or write or want. I would just sit and look at the mountains. They were so beautiful. I wasn't working at all. I was just like, oh, look, a birdie. And it would go, I didn't do any writing, so eventually I came completely away from the window, went down to the kitchen, and I faced the washer and dryer. And so my daily meditation for like 3 years was my washer and dryer. So eventually, of course, the poem rises. So this poem is called White Towels.